Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Dennisha Denney will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville. This show would not be possible without our sponsors. Thank you so much to REMAX 3D Real Estate, who serves our local community, not just Hunt County, but all the counties surrounding us. And thank you to Triton Networks. They are a solution for businesses, for your data, for your voice, for your network security, all in one place, where you get one invoice and you make one phone call to take care of all of your technology needs. On today's show, I asked Jennifer Samples to come on. Because of her story, she has a story of triumph through her journey of her accident. But she's also an incredible wife, mom, and real estate agent. Here's my conversation with Jennifer Samples. Hey y'all, I'm Dennisha Denney, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we're sitting down at the Landmark on Lee Street on the 3rd floor at The Landing. And I have the honor and privilege to sit down with Miss Jennifer Samples with REMAX 3D Real Estate. How are you today, Jennifer?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Okay, I'm ready. Yes.
I know. I got your message and you're like, I'm so nervous. It's like, don't be nervous. We're just going to have fun. It's just like whenever we went to go look at that property the other day and we were just sitting and we're driving and we're talking. That's what we're going to do today.
Yes, just hopefully I don't stumble or say anything I shouldn't.
You're going to do great. I want people to really get to know you. I've had the honor and privilege to get to know you over these last several years that you've been at our office. And you have so many stories. And when we were talking before we hit start, it's like, which story do we want to talk about? Because there are so many stories. But let's talk about, how did you get to Greenville? Because you didn't grow up here, right?
No, I actually went to high school in Colorado. And I loved it. There was beautiful. And then I decided that I didn't want to stay there forever. I wanted to go to college. And my parents had moved down here. And I looked into Texas A&M Commerce. And I went ahead and moved. I loved it, joined a sorority, and just became basically, just threw myself into life here in Hunt County.
Okay. Like, we got to go back. You're like, da-da-da-da-da.
Yes.
What made your parents move to Greenville?
Whenever I graduated high school, my parents, my dad's health, was kind of always it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the greatest. And they just really wanted to be in a warmer climate than where we were with less snow and all that kind of stuff. It just was going to be better, for them to come this direction.
How old were you when y'all moved?
Well, I actually did not move with them.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I was kind of rocking it for 18. I was
Miss Independent, right?
Well, I had my own Foot Locker. Whenever I was 16, I went to school, obviously full time. I played sports, and I'd get out of practice or games, and I'd run straight to work at Foot Locker. And whenever I was 17, they had made me a manager. And whenever I was graduating, they built me a combo store. It was like a Foot Locker and a kids' Foot Locker. And so at 18, I was basically running my own store. There was a general manager above me, but other than that, it was me. And so, man, I felt like I was rocking it
I
at
bet.
18. And then I started thinking.
Was that scary? Or I bet you just owned it.
Well, my best friend, Erica, moved in with me, and we had a lot of fun that year. And I was like, I don't know if I had any money left, though. So I was like, I don't want to sell shoes the rest of my life, which in reality, it's funny, I ended up back in sales at one point. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yes.
But the crazy thing is, my numbers were always so high, and that's why they just wanted me to keep doing it. And one day I probably would have went somewhere, but I was like, man, I'm going to have to sell a lot of shoes for a lot of years. And I just was at the point, I was like, I really want to do something else.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you decided that?
When I moved here, I actually had just turned 19.
Okay, so you were still really young then.
Yes, I only took a year off of school, and then that next fall, I had started at A&M Commerce.
Okay, so did you move in with your parents then when you came to Greenville?
I stayed at my parents'. They lived in Bonham at the time, and I made some awesome friends and hung out with them during the summer, and then I moved into one of the halls at A&M Commerce, and within a week, I was part of Gamma Phi Beta, and moved into their house and had, all my 50 sisters there that I still talk to this day. So
that's awesome. I love seeing your post when y'all all get together and reminisce about the good times.
It's crazy. Sometimes I sell houses that one of them has parts of buildings. So it's kind of crazy how the world wraps around.
Yes, it does. So when you graduated from college, what did you think you wanted to do?
Well, when I went to college, I went for radio, television, and I did sports broadcasting, and I did interviews, and we did game shows, and I DJ'd a radio station, that local one for Converse. So
cool
I'm sure there's
that?
some funny videos from a long time ago that.
What year was this? We need to go look it up.
I'm not telling you that because I don't even know if I want to look them up. It might have been a lot. I might want to, though.
You should. Girl, that's brave.
Too.
I mean,
that
look
was
at
so
you.
fun.
You stepped out and did that.
Then, life changes. And I found out I was having Tyler. And I was like, well, I really wanted to have I didn't want to go in radio, television. I probably would have went to something that was late at night, or I would have had to start at the bottom, which probably would have been horrible hours. And I was like, well, what's perfect for being a mom? And I always loved teaching anyway. And so I actually then switched my major and went into teaching.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that story. Oh, and now Tyler's moving out.
Oh, that's why I was like, please no. That might have been one thing we should have talked about. No. I was actually yesterday. I was driving and in the car, just started crying. So I was like, oh my gosh, he's the generation that was born during 9/11 and graduated during COVID. But he had stayed home and went to PJC here in Greenville for the last year. So now I'm finally having to deal with those moving out type things. And so, I sat in my car a couple times yesterday, actually, and cried.
Just cried.
And I was like, I don't even know why I was crying at half the time. But
because it's such a change. I mean, they're our babies and we've raised them, all of these
years. We
hung
out last night by ourselves, just him and his best friend forever. And we just...
But you know what?
We didn't really do
You
anything,
are an incredible mom. Incredible. You can look back on your life with your kids and have zero regret because you really do put your family first. And I get to see that firsthand every day that you put your family first. And you know how to prioritize that. So I see you and I see you, wishing him well and going off. But I love that you can look back and say, but I spent a lot of quality time with my kids.
I think that's one thing that I always, my parents were that way. My parents, no matter what, they were at our events. My dad would coach, my mom would help with whatever. I think she did team mom one year for cheerleading, and that was enough for her. She's like, oh, never mind, I'll be a coach's wife, And my dad coached me, he coached my brother, and then he coached, kiddos that, we just grew up in that lifestyle of whether it was a school event, athletic event, no matter what it was, my parents were there at everything my entire life. We weren't worried about some of those little things, half the time we're just running nonstop. So we just, the little things that people worry about, they don't even matter. No one thinks about those things later on. So they just remember the time you had.
Mm-hmm. That's all. That's what we have. That's all we have are our memories that we've built and made with our family.
Yeah, and I kind of always had been that way. It's just when I had a wreck, it instilled it more. I was already like that before my wreck, but then I spent some time in the hospital. Whenever I was in there, it was kind of like, I don't want to ever miss anything again, And there was, the only time. Well, I really try not to miss anything. I schedule. Pretty much my whole life is scheduled around all of my kids' activities.
It really is, and you do a great job of that. And I want to give a shout out to Celebrate Hunt County because they did such a great story on you and your accident and what happened. And so seeing those pictures from your accident and then knowing you today and knowing, and praying for you through that journey and seeing where you are today is just so incredible what God's done to heal you physically, but also emotionally and mentally. And I do think you live at a different level of joy because of that experience. So will you just kind of share a little bit about what happened? I know.
Well, it's crazy because whenever they did the Celebrate Hunt County, that was the first time I'd ever seen pictures of my wreck.
Really?
My husband Chris, when he came there that day, I think he really, at that moment, he didn't care if I ever really saw either, what he showed up and saw that day. And then I felt like in my healing, it wasn't something necessary. And honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to see them. And so whenever I did that Celebrate Hunt County, that was kind of like a crazy thing. Whenever she was like, oh, send me stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to look at it, or should I just have my husband send it? And I was like, you know what, it's just time.
Mm-hmm. And
how
many years has it been now?
So it's been 5 years since our wreck, and probably about 4 years since last surgeries or anything. So, and I did some more rehab after that too, and therapy. But
and it was a head-on collision.
Yeah,
right.
I guess I had left school, and I'd grabbed, Tyler and his best friend Bryce, and already had my Bryce and Jalen in the car. And I was, I always tell a little thing about, I asked if everyone was wearing their seatbelts, which I never do. I'm a great mom, but I don't check for seatbelts all the time. But that day I did. And while I was impatiently waiting to go coach basketball while my daughter put hers on, then 2 minutes later was when we were hit head on.
Oh my
and so it was a very crazy experience, and it's so crazy that I remember it so vividly. There's so many things with the Celebrate Hunt County. I was like, it's really touched, on some of it, but I was like, man, there's a few stories in there that I'm like, those are the stories, part of it too, that just make me realize that God is the only reason why I'm here. And I just, it almost kind of blows my mind.
I mean, we have time.
Well, I guess, one of them I think about a lot of times is, my husband's not like, gosh, dang, why are you telling this story?
He loves you anyway.
He has to. And whenever, it was probably, I was in ICU at the time, and I remember this so vividly, which is kind of crazy about it. But while I was there, they were giving me blood and platelets. And I could see him sleeping across the room. And, it's hard to remember a lot of things, vividly, because you're on a lot of medicine. I broke basically like lots of parts of my body except for my arms and up. So like my back, hips, things down my legs. So I basically broke a lot of stuff. And
a lot of important
things.
I
figured when I started feeling these like knots in my chest, and I was like, it's like that. It's probably just normal. And then I realized I wasn't breathing, and I didn't float out of my body, and watch it or anything. But I laid there, and I remember banging on the machines, and the lights were going off, and sirens,
really?
and I remember everything. But I remember mostly my husband was next to me, and he was screaming, "God, please let her breathe! God, please let her breathe!" like over and over again. And I could hear that, and I could see everything. And then I remember them having their little things to shock me, and then all of a sudden I was awake. And they said that right before they were going to shock me, I just started breathing.
Really?
And so it's like, it's things like that, I think, that I think about. But then also I think about, like, I can't even, I would never tell people's names and stuff, but there's so many stories that happen, like from the day of my wreck and on, like with people I knew, people I didn't even know, that came to me and shared stories, and like things changed in their lives too. And that's the thing is, I was, everyone's like, oh, did it change you? And I'm like, I already was like that, that, so I don't feel like, I needed this big wake up call, but I feel like God used me to kind of be there for a lot of people, to have, for some reason or another, like some connection to, and to realize that God is there.
Right.
I mean, that truly is something that I think, God used me as like his tool. And there's just stories that so many people know that are not shared with the whole world, that watching this video right now, probably they're going, she might be talking about me. But I would never say. And there's so many things that were amazing.
There's so many people that were there for you and praying for you.
I can't even, there's thousands and thousands, like literally. It's almost crazy to think about how much, all those years, I coached youth sports, and I did all those things, and I volunteered for everything then too, but I just never once thought that someone would be having to help me with anything, or my family. And so it was like a real weird, flip around, and like just kind of I guess that was our reality, is sometimes, we became on the opposite side of, I had people driving my kids to school every day, driving them around. I probably had hundreds of kids every week coming to the hospital to see me that weren't even my kids. And I think that's another thing too, is I went to that 7th floor, and even this morning, I think it was Dana Sadler. I'll say your name. She was one of my nurses, and on Tyler's little post I made, she wrote on there and said, "You're one of ours now." Like, just wrote something really sweet, and she was like, "The rehab floor is praying for you," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they still love me!" I was so excited. I was like, "They're so great,
special."
And then I see people all the time that help me learn to walk again, and that to me is like,
what was that like? Oh. What's it like to not be able to walk and then to not know how well you're going to ever be able to walk again?
Well, I think I do remember a moment. There were times, when they had me put weight on things, and then I remember taking a few little bitty steps, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's so exciting!" And I was like, "Man, I'm never gonna be," because when I first learned to do anything at the hospital at all, I was still in an immobilizer on my right side. And whenever I got to go home, they took off the immobilizer, and my leg didn't bend at all on the right side. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's never gonna bend." But I had some amazing people. I went over to Terry Sadler. It's funny, he's got the same last name, Terry Sadler, and Dominique, Nolan, Jimmy, Risa. I have to say all their names, because I don't leave them out. And I love them because not only once but twice they taught me to walk, and we went through so much. Like, I remember going there, and it was physical torture is PT. It's physical therapy
for your own good.
You have to do it in order to get better. And I remember times that Dominique, she would put this rope thing around me, around my waist, and she'd hold the back of it, and I'd have to get down like a football player, and I'd have to drag her across the floor.
Really?
And there are people in there would go, "Are you going to make me do that?" I could hear them whispering, and they were like, "No, she's just different." And I'm like, "I'm different. This is why they do this to me."
They should have said you're special. That's different.
Well, I think everyone knew I was pretty special. They spoiled me. I think about the hospital too. Greenville Hospital to me is probably, God, I love them. The 7th floor, I seriously can't ever, when people ever talk about the hospital, I'm like, "Oh, what?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "I love them."
I know. When we did the adoptive floor at Christmas, you're like, "We have to have the 7th floor."
Yeah.
They
was so
seriously
important. Spoiled me so much. And there were so many people on that floor too that when I was there, I had all these things, and someone would show up and they'd have a hip replacement. Not that it's not, hard, but they'd show up and they just kind of were angry at the world, and they didn't want to go to their stuff. And then they'd see me, and I'd talk to them, because I make everyone talk to me.
Yes, you do.
If you know me, then even if you don't know me, then you're
going to know
talk
you.
to me. And I would talk to them some, and next thing you know, they'd be in there doing their stuff like they're supposed to, and so it's just.
So you were an inspiration to them.
I don't know if I'm.
You are. This is what you say. Yes. Well, it is. I mean, if you're in there for a hip replacement, or you broke your hip, and here you are, again, this young girl learning to walk again. That's a pretty big deal. How long were you in the hospital for?
I was in Plano for probably around a month before I came to Greenville, and then I was in Greenville for probably a few months, and then I was in and out of the hospital for a week here and a week there, unfortunately, during that first year. And it's funny because I'd learned to walk pretty good, like I say, pretty good, my new norm.
Yes.
And whenever I kept telling them, I'm like, I feel like my right leg might still be broken, and we'd laugh about it, and just because I just figured it was normal.
Right.
And then one day they did some tests, and this was in November of that year, so it was way further in the year. And they did, and I had a few broken bones still. And I was like, we weren't kidding. I was like, well, I feel better because I've been saying this. And so but
not thinking it was real.
No. And so then I had to go back in, and they were like, "Oh, you'll be up walking the next day on crutches." And then when I went in, it messed up. And I woke up to them going, "I'm so sorry." And so I couldn't walk again. And I went back to my awesome people, my crew. And whenever I went over there, they were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I need to walk again." And they were like, "Jennifer?" And they just took me right then, and they almost killed me, but I'm still here, and I can walk again.
And you walk great. You came up the stairs just fine this morning.
And that's most of the time, I look normal pretty much. Mm-hmm. And then people that know me know that I live normal all day, and, that's just something that you have to deal with sometimes at night. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather live normal and live
And live.
than is sit back and, not do things on the sidelines, as some people would call it.
Yeah.
But-
You didn't let it hold you back. That's what I love
Yeah.
about that.
I felt like a lot of that dealt with too. Besides my own children, my family, I had thousands of kids that I had taught or coached over the years, and I mean, a lot of them needed to know that I was going to be okay. Some of them, I was like one of the most stable things even in their lives, and so it's basically like I was there 1 second and then gone, and it was something that I feel like in the long run, I truly had to like get as good as I could just to show them that God was real.
Right.
And I think a lot of those kids that, if their lives were rough or something, I remember one of them one day said, God loves you. And I was like, yeah, he loves you too. And I was just like, wow. I was
Yes.
like, yes. And I was like, and as a kid, I think needed to,
Yeah, they needed to
see
hear that.
and hear it. So
Oh,
life's kind of crazy
that's
the
so
way it
precious.
works.
Were there, so all your kids were in the car. And
Well,
so,
Braden actually was the only, it's funny, because that morning with Chris, his work schedule the way it is, sometimes he'd be like, oh, let me keep a kid home. And he was the youngest one at the time, and so we were like, I was like, no, he shouldn't miss, school. And he was like, he'll be fine. I remember we went back and forth forever, and I ended up leaving him home. I remember that I paid $1 that day to wear my favorite pair of jeans, my favorite boots. And I was so, if you wake up as a teacher and it's a jean day,
oh, that's a good
and
day.
I don't care if you had to pay $1 or $5, you'd pay that because it's a good day.
Yes.
And I was wearing all my favorites that day. I do. It's so funny to think about it that way. But yeah, it was actually then Jalen, Bryce, and Tyler, and then one of my best friends, Jenny Sammy, and her son Bryce was in the car.
So what was it like for them? I mean, thankfully none of them were
Gosh.
seriously injured, right?
Yeah, it was very hard, and I think emotionally for a long time. I think also the oldest boys, when the wreck happened, the car was on fire for a minute. They couldn't get me to respond. And so really it was about just getting them and the kids out of the car, and then the fire stopped. So that was like another thing that was like, yeah, it's like, thank you
Yes.
God, like literally.
Literally, yes.
And then what they did is they stayed in the car with me, Tyler and his friend Bryce, who's my other kiddo too. And they waited until they heard a sound, and then the police finally said, y'all have to get out. And at that point, that's when Tyler, I think, realized his hand was shattered, and because he was like, Daddy, where'd my knuckles go? And Chris was like, oh. He's like, oh. Yeah. And so he was, all of them were actually taken to Greenville, which is also so fun to think about because I wasn't there, and, a lot of kids, a lot of people know me. So Chris didn't know what was going to happen with me. He had to go to where I was in Plano. So, my mom and, some of Tyler's, their family too. And then Chris's mom, they were all there, and it just was chaos. And the guy that caused the wreck was there too. So, it was just a very crazy thing that I didn't know anything about until I came to Greenville. And then when I came to Greenville, like everyone, like probably the first 2 weeks I was there, I had a different person from the ER that would come see me because they wanted to tell me about the night my kids came and the stories and just the things that, and I just thought that was really sweet too because with having so many kiddos there and only having a few people to help out, that were with mine, then it just made me know that those people really did love my kiddos and take care of them.
And love you too. So you didn't go back to teaching after that, did you?
No, I did. So I couldn't go back the next year. I had another surgery right after that. And then as time kind of went by, I was that crazy, like weird teacher, I jumped all over the room and I was not normal. And I mean,
Normal
I know it's surprising.
Is boring.
Yeah. I was the teacher that was literally all over the place and just real fun, but still made them, have to listen. And I just felt like, I really couldn't be that teacher. So I kind of started looking into small group stuff. And I my kiddos had came to Greenville at that time. They had been in Quinlan, which was amazing. I can't even say enough about how amazing they were. And because I didn't know if I'd drive or what I'd be able to do, they went ahead and they switched over here. Well, my little ones went to Bowie, and I ended up doing some star tutoring for a little bit there. It was just real small groups, and I mean, absolutely up my alley. I taught fourth grade for 12 years. So I did that, and then I just kind of, everyone kept reaching out to me, and they're like, hey, do you want to sell my Avocare? Do you want to sell Plexus? You want to sell Thrive? And all these things kept coming, and I was like, I used to do sales, and even when I went to college, I worked at Super Tans, and man, I rocked it there too. And I was
you did.
I was like, I should be selling something.
So much product I didn't need.
Thank you for those
sold
bonuses.
It to me.
No, and I just really think that I was always meant to do something with sales, and that's why in the long run I ended up calling you, because I was like, what do I want to sell that I don't have to, be like, hey, please buy this from me. Right. I just wanted something that was more natural. And, with housing market, either you want to sell or you don't. Either you want to buy or you don't. I'm not out there begging, hey, can you please buy a house this week? Please. I am though. If any of you, are on the line right there, I am saying yes, I will help you sell your house or buy one.
Absolutely.
But, I don't know. I just really think that sales was where I needed to go, and that's why I was like, "Hey, will you meet with me? Do you think I should do real estate?" And it was the best decision I ever made.
Oh, so. Absolutely. And I remember whenever you reached out to me and we went and had lunch at Panera that day and sitting down with you, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness! Like she was made for this."
Yeah,
because you take such great care of your clients and you work so hard for them, and juggling all the things that you do with your kiddos and all the community things that you're involved in.
Well, that's why I thank God for good clients too, because they're very flexible as well. So that way I can still, do all the things that I do. I thank God that I have clients that understand that I do have a busy life too. And so we would do some weird hours sometimes, but we make it work. So.
I know. I see your dot loop. Your transaction management come through at 1 in the morning.
Feel free to call me at 1 in the morning. I'm usually up working on real estate, but at least during the day I did everything else that I needed to do with my kids.
But you're so passionate about it. That's what I love about it. It's not a job for you at all.
No, it is. I really do think it's fun. There's times that I'm like, oh gosh, we're going to get through it. But I think that's any job that you have, you're going to have those moments. And for the most part, it is really exciting. It's fast paced. We just keep moving. And
it's kind of like all your coaching that you do. You coach all the select baseball and all that, but real estate's a lot of coaching too, because we're coaching our clients and helping them understand the process and what happens next.
And that's the thing is with coaching, I've done that for 16 years now, and gosh, it's dating me a lot, but Tyler will be 20 this year. But I did a lot of coaching. I've coached baseball forever. And I've, coached softball now, coached volleyball and basketball. And a lot of times I always had like 2 to 3 teams. But then as they started getting older and they really started branching into pure select with a lot of that, I did Bryce plays for the elite now. So he's, got his own coaches over there and his own things. But sometimes, it gets to a point where you're like, oh, it's time for them to get the next step. Because nowadays, we didn't have to play any of these things to go play in high school.
Right.
Like, I don't even know if half of us touched some things. I don't think I played volleyball at all until my freshman year. Because I didn't even know I was going to play ever.
I know.
So
I didn't touch it until middle school.
But now I'm like, you have to really step it up. These programs are crazy out there. So that's why even like at the high school, and I guess I'll put a little plug in for this because, I am on different boards. I'm on the Education Foundation, so we do stuff, for teachers. Well, then I'm on the Athletic Booster Club board too, which I'm very passionate about because, we are a very athletic family and we live and breathe a lot of our kids' sports, but one day it's going to pay off. But not like, financially even. It's more the fact that sports help kids learn how to problem solve, how to get along with others, whether you like them or don't like them, how to work together, and maybe how to start liking someone you didn't think you liked either. So, there's just so many things that benefit from sports. And then when you branch out to some of these higher level sports too, it really steps up them having to learn to compete, how to lose sometimes. And, and if you mess up, life goes on. And, in those leagues, they're real disciplined too, so it's good for them. And then Braden started playing, with a little team too. That's kind of out of Caddo. It's Caddo and Greenville kids, probably mostly over there with Jeff Isham. So he does that one, but I still coach the basketball teams. And this year I had Bryce, who is going to be a freshman, and his friend Damon. They actually helped me coach a younger team, and those are kind of things too that I think are important is bringing these kids in. And one day I was coaching in another gym with Allie, and I was coaching a girls team, and my boys team had already started. So the boys, they were 8th graders, but they're running that game.
Yeah.
And so I went over there, and there was like eight 8th graders coaching when I got there. And I was like, I'm not even going to make them sit down because this is so good for them. Like, they were so excited. And then, like, every week there'd be a few of them at least there.
Just
and I'm
leading.
like, you start doing that stuff now, it builds up community, support. And that's one thing I think that I'm really trying to push in Greenville too, is like, we really need to have a lot more community support and pride in our teams at the high school, because as much as academics is important, those athletics things, that does bring a lot of revenue into your school district. And it's really fun to go watch these kiddos play and see how much they've grown.
And for some of these kids, it gives them purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
That they're something to belong
and they're
to.
supposed to be, and I'm not going to say, I don't know enough details to talk about, but there's supposed to be an athletic bond eventually coming out. And
good.
So just so you know, I will be bothering everybody, and I'll really be trying to help push them. There'll be another bond too as well for the school district, I know. But I will be really trying to get people to support them, because honestly, you take pride in your facilities, and it really shows in your programs then too.
Does. So we're on Heart of Greenville. So let's talk real quick. What do you love about Greenville?
Gosh, I love everything. I feel like I'm almost related to everyone. I feel like everyone everyone's really been, for me not growing up here, I feel like I did.
Right.
And
I love that.
and I guess that's really what I laugh at sometimes, because when I hear people that are my age talk, I'm like, we would have graduated together, we'd have like done all those things, but I feel like no matter what, I was here for all of it. And I think that's really important to me is, a lot of times you move to a town and they already have I don't care how old you are, everyone already has their cliques, they have their things, and you have to try to fit in. And, I came here at 19 to Commerce, and, started teaching over here in Greenville. And when I first started teaching, I did my internship and residency at Lamar, and then I taught at Crockett 2 years before I went to Quinlan. And I feel like no matter what, this entire community has embraced my entire family.
Yes.
And like even before my rec, so it's not just, the rec, it's before it, after it. I feel like no matter what, this town has been so good to us that I could never, I don't know, I guess that's why I'm still here.
Yeah,
I feel like it's my home.
Yes.
I feel like it's my hometown, even though I didn't grow up here.
So to be honest, since I've known you since super tan days, I feel like you've been here all of my life. So I feel like this is your home.
I was like, I think the only thing I feel like I didn't do here obviously was go to school, but when everyone tells stories, most of the time now we're getting older, so all the stories come after high school, most of them now. And so I feel like I'm part of them for sure. I'm like, all right.
I love that.
Like I grew up here.
Okay, we have your final question. So if you will pick a number between 1 and 20.
Good one. Okay. Let's just go in the middle. Let's go to 10.
10. Okay. If you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
I don't want that question.
You don't want that one?
I'm just
I was like, okay.
No, let me see. What would I say?
What would you say to the world?
I would say that the little things that people worry about that are superficial, in the end, never matter.
I love that.
And if you spend too much time worrying about them, everything else will pass you by, and you won't ever get it back. So it's truly about enjoying the things that matter and quit stressing about the things that never will.
I love that so much. That's like, we don't even need to say anything else. That's the perfect way to end the show.
Oh man, I practiced. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I didn't know the question.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on the show. And I know that was it was a little bit nervous, but you've done a great job.
I didn't have a lot of notice either, so I was like, oh gosh, what did I say yes for? But
I'm so glad you did. And thank you for sharing your heart. And thank you for giving back so much to our community. And I know I have a whole list of all the things that you do, and you're so humble about it. But you have such an incredible servant's heart. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate
Thanks for having me.
You're
it was
welcome.
fun. I survived it, so it was really good.
You did great. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.